The Bridge is brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places.
Welcome back to The Bridge. So last weekend was the second round of the OSAA football tournament, and well, things went a little bit haywire. Joining us once again is Nate Hanson from KGW. Nate, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm great, Justin. It really was a wild last Friday night last week.
All right, so let's go back to last week when you were on the show. We talked about the overwhelming favorite.
Yeah.
The number one team in the state was Tigard, came in undefeated, consensus number one. Second round, what the heck happened?
They kind of dropped the ball, really. They had a couple key players that were injured and sidelined that they were without, but Mountainside really matched their physicality. That was their opponent, and it was a game that Tiger trailed early, but then they had the lead going through the third quarter, and you thought, okay, Tigers got this. They're going to cruise to a victory. Then all of a sudden, some turnovers in their own end zone. Mountainside capitalizes, and it goes into overtime, and Mountainside makes an incredible 25-yard game-winning touchdown to beat the number one team in the state in the second round. Just a historic win, really, at the Oregon High School playoff level.
Well, historic for a couple of reasons. Yeah. One is, like you mentioned, with that the victory over the number one team. But you mentioned it last week, but I think it's worth repeating that Mountainside is a team that is, what, just 3 years old?
Yeah, just 3 years old, and this is only their second year with a varsity football program. And so last year they won 3 games. This year they finished the regular season 6-3, won a playoff game in the first round against Clackamas, but then you go and take on the number one team in the state, and you go and beat them the way they did. It's incredible for a program in their second year, and they have a lot of underclassmen. So this is a program that's going to continue to build and be better. In year 2, you're beating the Tigers of the area. It's really quite an accomplishment.
We'll have more on Mountainside and what they have coming up a little bit later on. But I know you mentioned it last week too, Lake Ridge and kind of their unbelievable run, and it continues.
It does continue. They knocked off Beaverton, who was one of the best in the Metro League in week 1, and then in week 2 they knocked off Aloha, another one of the best Metro League teams. They beat the Warriors 51-40, and once again, it was behind their running back. I talked about him last week, Jalen John. He's going to be going to Arizona. This kid is a stud. Yeah. Rushed for more than 200 yards in the first playoff game. Nearly rushed for 300 yards in the win against Aloha. We're talking video game stats right now, and he's leading the charge. In Lake Ridge, 3-6 in the regular season, the number 22 seed, and they found a way to win their first 2 playoff games. We always thought the talent was there, but they played really tough competition in the regular season. Now they're playing up to that competition in the postseason, and they're into the quarterfinals.
And it makes for some interesting matchups. And let's kind of look ahead into this week's upcoming game, because now that essentially the king of the hill is gone.
Yeah.
And Tigard is now out. It is kind of anyone's game. So Mountainside, the team that did take down Tigard, they now take on Barlow. What do you got for that matchup?
Well, Barlow is interesting because they've just kind of stayed under the radar all year. They're the number 9 seed in the tournament. They beat the number 8 seed Sheldon last week, and they're 9-2 this year. They've beaten the teams you would expect them to beat. Their 2 losses are to Tigard, who obviously was number 1 and very good, and Central Catholic was their other loss. They weren't very competitive in either of those losses, but they've kind of just taken care of business, and now they find themselves also as a surprise team in the quarterfinals. If you had Barlow and Mountainside as a quarterfinal matchup heading into the postseason, you should go and buy a lottery ticket right now, because this was totally unexpected.
So I know you talked about Lake Ridge and their Cinderella run that is continuing, and it's going to have to continue because they've got the number 3 team in the state. They got Lake Oswego this week.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough. Lake Oswego is really good, although Lake Oswego also had their challenges last week in the second round. They trailed by 14 points in the third quarter to West Salem, and before they rode Casey Filkins on their way to a victory. He accounted for 6 touchdowns last week for Lake Oswego. These 2 teams have actually played each other before because they're in the Three Rivers League. Lake Ridge and Lake Oswego, obviously big rivals. That was the regular season finale, and Lake Oswego won that one 41-17. And that matchup was really billed as a matchup of running backs. Jalen John going to Arizona for Lake Ridge, and Casey Filkins going to Stanford for Lake Oswego. And both kids ran for about 250 yards in that game, so it's going to be quite a quarterfinal.
Top 10 matchup, you've got number 7, Tualatin, going up against number 2, which kind of becomes the favorite now in Jesuit.
And this is really, I think this could be a matchup where whoever wins this could win the entire tournament. Because both of these teams, I talked last week, what teams could possibly challenge Tigard, who was the favorite at the time. to win the title. And we talked about both Jesuit and Tualatin. Jesuit's got a great running back in Cade Wisher. He ran for 285 yards when Jesuit put up 70 points against Liberty last week in the playoffs. But Tualatin is an all-around team, and they finally have started cooking a little bit here at the end of the season. They put up 50 points against North Medford last week. Like I said, they can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they've got a steady defense. This is really going to be a good matchup.
Now, we talked about all of the upsets and all of the interesting matchups, but one of the matchups that was kind of chalk, and that is Westland Central Catholic, number 4 versus number 5. And again, these teams now know with Tigard out, there's opportunities out there.
Not only do they know with Tigard out, but the winner of this game will play the winner of Mountainside and Barlow in the semifinals. So they know if they advance, they have a very winnable game moving forward. These two teams, Central Catholic and Westland, also played each other. This one, you have to go way back to week 1. And Central Catholic came out on top in that one. But Elijah Elliott, they rode the running back. He had 180 yards in that game. But Westland, again, their offense is also really good. They have Gavin Haynes at running back who they rely on. Ethan Coleman can really throw it around for the Lions. This, as you said, it's going to be chalk. This is probably the most anticipated matchup of the quarterfinals.
And also a bit of an interesting side note, of course, Westland and their head coach, going to be moving on to the XFL. Yeah. So you've got that little wrinkle in there as well.
This could be his last game as Westland's coach. I'm sure he's hoping it's not. I'm sure he's hoping he has a couple more to coach for, but it very much could be Chris Miller's last game at Westland.
All right, so more exciting stuff coming up tonight. So people need to tune in to KGW, and of course you guys at Friday Night Flights. Hey, Nate, thank so much. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. All right, coming up next, we have got more of The Bridge on the way. Go nowhere.